Welcome to the Compassionate Corner podcast, where we share stories of resilience, cancer, and hope. I'm your host, Roya Soleimani Winner, and this podcast is a voice for the International Society for Children with Cancer, ISCC. In each episode, you'll hear from survivors, caregivers, and medical professionals who have firsthand experiences with cancer. They share their journeys, the lessons learned, and even the moments of unexpected joy and hope. Whether you're facing a similar battle, supporting someone who is, or simply seeking to understand and learn from these powerful stories, you found the right place. Thank you for being with us as we explore these extraordinary stories of resilience and hope right here in the Compassionate Corner. Today, our topic is all about mental health. And it's actually Mental Health Awareness Month, so this feels quite timely. And we're joined by an awesome guest who I'll give a quick introduction to, and then we'll dive into our conversation. We are joined today by Shireen Shahidi, who is a registered associate marriage and family therapist based in Encino, California. She specializes in working with people of all ages who are facing anxiety, depression, and trauma. She's been a supporter and a volunteer for ISCC for over a decade, and we are so happy to welcome her here in the Compassionate Corner. Shireen Jun, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is so nice to finally get to have this conversation and bring it to the podcast. I'm excited.
We have been so waiting to talk with you, and I think every conversation we have here in this space touches on mental health in some way.
Absolutely.
But I think having this very focused conversation around mental health, both for, again, caregivers, someone going through a cancer journey or in remission, or even just in general as we think about how communities and cultures approach mental health, I feel like there's a lot we can get into.
Oh, there's so much.
And with that in mind, I actually just want to first learn a bit about you and your work as a marriage and family therapist and what inspired you to get into this line of work.
So growing up, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an eye doctor for like years and years and years. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to go to medical school. I'm not good at math. I'm not good at science. So what am I going to do? And then junior year of high school, I took a psychology class and I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. I like this. I'm like, that's cool. Like you just get to learn about the brain, how the brain impacts you. Like it was all just very interesting to me. And I was like, this is something that I think I could explore. So I went to college, went to community college, went to my four-year university. And when I was at USD, the University of San Diego, I decided to be a psych major. I was like, this is what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm going to do in psych, but I know I need to do something within it because it just intrigued me so much. I was like, this is just my calling. I don't know why. And I think also there was never anything that pulled me so much other than psych. Like there wasn't like marketing or like science or health or whatever. Like there was nothing that really made me feel super connected other than psychology. And so I kind of took it and ran with it. And then towards the end of my undergraduate degree, so within literally that weekend, I got my letter of rec, my grades, everything, sent it over to Pepperdine. And like that Monday, I was like, I had applied. And I was like, okay, let's just see what happens. Truly, because I was like, again, I'm a shot in the dark. Like, let's just see what happens. Either it works out or it doesn't. And I figure it out from there. And so then like 2 weeks later, it was like the day before my birthday. And I found out I got in. I was literally in like my history of art class. And I like get an email and it was like, congratulations, you've been admitted to like Pepperdine University Graduate School of Education and Psychology for a master's in clinical psych with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy. And I was like, I literally was like dumbfounded. I was like, there is no way. Like how did I do this? How did I just pull this out and like make it happen? And so that was kind of where my journey started. Then I went to Pepperdine. I was there for 2.5 years in the middle of the pandemic, which was like a lot, but you know, made it work. And then I was commuting from Orange County to LA for practicum. I would come back down to Orange County, had class. My mom will tell you I was not the nicest person at the time.
It's a lot to manage. It's stressful. And you know, the small thing that we all dealt with, for those who are not watching, I'm saying this with sarcasm, of course, the pandemic. in the middle of everything.
Exactly. Just a little pandemic on top of
Exactly.
everything else. I'm like, okay, good. Now I have to deal with this. So, and so then that ended, and then I worked for during my practicum, I worked at a residential inpatient treatment facility in Culver City. And so our clients suffered with like major mood disorders as well as just like anxiety and things like that.
Yeah.
But it was good because I got to see what it looks like to like have an actively psychotic client or a client who is, has just gotten out of mania or, things like that. So, and that was kind of what I wanted. I wanted to like be exposed to that environment because growing up in Irvine and, living a very sheltered life, I had never seen that before.
Sure.
And so I kind of threw myself into that. And then after that job or after that ended and I graduated, I worked for the government for a year at the Department of Mental Health in a program called CalWorks. And so I was a CalWorks therapist for a year. And then I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I'm feeling a little stressed. I think I need to take a bit of a break. And I want to transition into private practice because ultimately that is my goal, is to like have my own practice or be part of a practice and, have my own clients and associates and things like that. So it just kind of seemed like the natural next step. And so, I'm working in Encino right now at a group private practice called Real Honest Therapy. So that's kind of the skinny
Awesome.
of my life.
I love how, and again, you talk about it as if it happened over a weekend, but really you've been building towards this, it sounds
Mhm.
like,
Yeah,
from your own interest and passion. Because when things click like that, it doesn't just happen. It's like sort of a call. It seems
totally.
like it in the moment, but it was a culmination of hard work and persistence. And you
Mhm.
just needed that little spark to really get it over the finish line. But really, it
Yeah.
sounds like a lot of the work you were putting in. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
Tell
Thank
me a
you.
bit about, we're here through the ISCC podcast. You
Mhm.
are very closely tied in with the organization, have volunteered for over a decade.
Mhm.
Share more about the role of ISCC in your life and any personal connections you have as well to the
For
organization
sure.
and to the cause of pediatric cancer.
Absolutely. So I started volunteering with ISCC in 2008. So I was 13, 14? No, 12. I can't do math. That's why I'm a
Helping kids
therapist.
as a kid. You're helping kids
I'm
as
like,
a kid.
I was a preteen.
Yes,
We'll just say that because I
young, young
literally don't.
adolescent.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I was a young one. And so my very first bazaar, I like dressed up in the Lebas Mahali. I like came and I was like, all right, we're doing this. And I had no idea what IACC was. I like didn't know what we were doing, but of course I was just like thrown into it. But since then, since 2008, IACC has had like a profound impact on my life. I'm sure everyone knows my mom, Suzanne. She's the executive director of the organization. So any event that IACC would put on, my mom was like, Shireen, you're coming, you're volunteering, you're gonna do this because this is really good for you and you need to know how to give back to the community. And I was like, okay, let's do it. I was also part of NCL, like National Charity League, and so that kind of transition ended around that like early adolescent time, and then or started, sorry. And so I was doing NCL and IACC together. It was kind of like a progression in that way. But IACC is one of the most it's an organization that I feel deeply connected to because I feel as though there's no fluff. What we're doing here is we're helping children with cancer. I think another aspect of it is that I've also been to the hospital in Iran multiple times and I've seen what they've done with like the establishment and like where all of the, kind of what we're working for. And obviously there's other organizations that IACC helps as well, but the primary hospital in Iran, it's a beautiful thing to witness. It's like, wow, this is amazing. It looks exactly like chalk. It's probably way better than chalk or any of these other hospitals. And so in the States. And so
Sidebar, that's Children's Hospital of Orange County for folks who may be
yes,
listening from outside of the area. But it's true, it's a state of the art facility, I think, in
it
the
is.
entire region, not just across Iran.
Absolutely. It's truly amazing. True, like what they've done and what they've built in like Balai Tape in Iran, like in the middle of the mountains. Like truly it's amazing. So it's IACC is like an integral part of my life and it's been something that just been very blessed to have like in my ether for like 10 plus years. So yeah, it's been great.
It's a sign, I think, of obviously your mom's leadership, your own, giving heart. And I
Hmm.
think the work that you do is also so, closely tied in with sort of, I think, the purpose of the organization to provide support for kids with cancer.
Hmm.
That support, yes, it's their treatment and it's the follow up. But tell me a bit about mental health and cancer, right? So, have you
Absolutely.
worked with patients that have cancer or can walk us through sort of, managing the emotional roller coaster, whether you as the so I'll give a moment here. Every
Hmm.
conversation we've had here on the podcast, or I've had in my life with someone who's experienced cancer, they
Hmm.
describe this feeling
Hmm.
when they first hear the news where they say, it's as if I blacked out. Like I'm
Absolutely.
physically there, I'm awake, the doctor's mouth is moving,
Hmm.
but I heard they say this, and then it's almost like a complete, I can't process with it. Can you walk us through what that means, if that's a
Absolutely.
general sort of experience, and then also just sort of any strategies you would give to somebody who's currently battling cancer and the emotional roller coaster that comes with it?
Absolutely. So I haven't had any clients with cancer personally, but there's people in my, ether who have had it. And so I can obviously empathize with them. I think the number one thing is if you or someone in your family is struggling with cancer is to find a therapist. Find a therapist that you can talk to, that you can kind of divulge everything to, have that outlet that's unbiased, that's supportive, that you're able to kind of be who you want to be and express, your needs to. Another thing also is that when you initially find that cancer diagnosis or when they first tell you, of course, exactly like you're saying, like you feel like everything's kind of crashing and you're like, "Oh my God, this is okay, like
Yeah.
what is going on," right? And so with that, I think what kind of happens is that that's a bit of a trauma response. It's kind of like your body like blacks out so that you don't end up kind of spiraling in the moment, and it kind of hits you after and you're like, whoa. So, it's very convoluted in that way, but I think what's important is having that support outside of your family, outside of your core support system, like a therapist that you can go to, help kind of analyze what you're going through and how you want to fix it and things like that. I hope that made sense.
It does. And I think a lot about the folks that we've talked with on the podcast. And
Hmm.
they've said, people expect me to be so strong, and I want to stay strong for them. And I think whether it's a cancer diagnosis or any sort of challenge in life, or just in the human experience, having a therapist to talk with, right? The power of it. I've been grateful to be working with my therapist for over 6 years.
Hmm.
She's an integral part of my life and has been through all these ups and downs. We can get completely raw and real. There's no judgment. There's a mirror. There's a reflection. There's someone who's sort of able to help you process. So I imagine for someone who people are like, oh, you're strong and oh, you're a warrior, they
Yes.
may feel that and receive that, but they may not feel that all the time.
Mhm.
And so having
Absolutely.
a space where they have permission to unravel if they need to, or share all of those things. So for folks listening, number one advice is to find a good therapist. And Shannon, any advice actually on navigating that, again, for someone in this situation or
Yeah.
just anyone in general, because it can be tricky.
Absolutely. So I've actually had a lot of people reach out to me and be like, "How do I find a therapist?"
Yeah.
So it's like a very, valid question. I think number one is if you have insurance, see what your insurance will provide you with. Of course, if you have state insurance, there's obviously state funded mental health services that you can go through. If you have like Blue Cross, Blue Shield, all the little nitty gritty insurance companies, they will have their own network that they work with, so you can go through them. One thing that's also a great resource is Psychology Today. I have been recommending Psychology Today from like literally the time I graduated grad school because it is truly so great. You can definitely tailor your search to exactly who you want, right? So if you're like, I want a multicultural therapist who's a woman who's in Encino, great. You would probably come across me or my
Yeah.
colleagues or whatever, right? If you want someone that doesn't meet any of that criteria, then of course you can also find that as well. Psychology Today is very comprehensive and it kind of gives you all of the information that you need. So that's a great resource. Another one is there's this one called Mental Health Match. I don't know I'm not extremely familiar with it, but I do know that it's something that's positive, and I am a provider on there as well. So there's another resource. It's called Mental Health Match. Mental Health Match is a lot like Psychology Today, but it's tailored towards Black, Indigenous people, and that community. If you feel like drawn to that community and you want to see a therapist who kind of fits that cultural context, then of course you can. And then there's another one called Open Path. And Open Path is great if you can't pay like a full fee. The therapists on there agree to a fee from like $40 to $70 a session. And you can also see student clients. That's even less than that. And so it's a great resource, honestly. I tell a lot of people, I'm like, hey, if you can't afford therapy, but you need a therapist, like Open Path is so great, especially because if you don't want to go through insurance, like you can also do that. And so, yeah, I would say those are definitely the three most common, to me at least. I think those are the most impactful like resources that you can use to find kind of people in the community that match your needs.
Can I ask a quick follow-up on that one?
Of course,
Which is,
yeah.
for someone who's never had therapy before, or now that, let's say they go to these resources, how do they know they found the right connection? Is it a feeling they get? Is it a set of questions they should ask? How do you know you've sort of found, or found the right one, or found one that maybe isn't the right fit for you? Like, can you walk us through that a little bit?
Totally. That's a great question. I think what happens is a lot of people are like, yeah, this person looks good. Let's like set up a consult and see what the vibes are. And then they're like, oh, I don't really like them. I guess I'll just like have to stick with them. But the thing is, you don't have to. Like, if you're not vibing with your therapist, like you don't need to stay with them. Personally, I always say pick someone who you feel drawn to. If you come from a cultural context that's not, American culture, and you're like, I want someone that like gets, for example, Iranian culture. Yeah. So if you see like my about or anyone else's about, and it's like, hey, like this is what I do and I work with this environment and blah, 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 then obviously that if that's something that's appealing to you, then go for it. And then another thing also, it's like, give yourself the permission, like if it doesn't work out, it's not that serious. Like the therapist won't take it in a negative way. If you're like, hey, I think I need someone else, that's totally fine. I think what happens is people just feel like stuck. They're like, oh my God, like I don't want to tell the therapist that I like don't like this, or I'm not vibing with this. And it's completely okay. It's like they shouldn't have any problem with it. It's, you want this to be an environment that's safe and protected and relaxed. And so if you're not vibing with that person, then of course it's like, okay, bye. I
love that, because speaking of Iranian culture, for those who may not be familiar, we have tarof in our culture, which is sort of this combination of formality and people pleasing and all sorts of things combined together. So I can imagine how someone might feel a little bit of that even in that therapist-client relationship. So thank you for walking us through that. Someone looking for a culturally informed therapist. I wanted to switch gears and talk a bit that in a way that might be helpful for someone who is supporting a loved one or neighbor or family member, coworker, etc., who is battling cancer actively right now. What are the best ways that we can show up for that person, to show that we love them, to be there for them, when sometimes people don't know what to say?
Absolutely. The number one way is just, understanding what they need from you and how you can help. Asking like, hey, do you want me to come over and help you with laundry? Do you want me to cook you a yummy meal? Do you need help getting to doctor's appointments? Do you need me to kind of take the kids to school, figure out like ancillary things that I can help you with? Just being a source of support for that person, I think more than anything is really helpful, because and I'm sure everyone knows this, when you are struggling, it's difficult to express your needs. It's difficult to be like, hey, I need you, right? Because a lot of people are like, nah, like, it's okay. Like, I won't say anything. Like, they have their own life. But as the support for someone who is struggling with cancer, like, you can be there for them in so many ways without them even asking. So I think it's more just being like, what would I want and how can I give that to that person?
That's a great point in life as well, outside of these moments.
Totally.
It's like sort of imagining what would be helpful to me. And I think especially when we add that cultural context, people, again, that tarof, that
Absolutely.
I don't want to be a burden, but really, like, they're not going to feel well after a treatment, or they may not be able to do that laundry or pick up their kids and play with them or whatever it might be in that moment. And so showing up also, I think, makes you feel like you're able to do something material as they're going through this period.
Absolutely.
On that note, I think, there's so many moments in life, again, going back to people not really knowing what to say. What are some things that people should not say to someone who is battling cancer?
The first thing that comes to mind is telling them everything happens for a reason.
Oh, yes.
Because that sentiment, I understand that it's rooted in trying to be like supportive and give them perspective. But when you're dealing with cancer, it's like someone telling you like, yeah, you deserve it. And you're like, no, no one deserves that, right? So it's about kind of being aware of how you're using your language to help them and like, what could be helpful, what can like actually inhibit them, right? So I'd say that is definitely something you don't want to say. I think also just kind of being like, oh, well, like, yeah, I did notice that like you were a little different or whatever, right? Because then that could also try like kind of make them spiral. Like something that makes me, brings this up is like if someone's like dealing with leukemia and they have like a lot of bruises and you're like, oh, well, you have had a lot of bruises. Like maybe you do have leukemia, or like, oh, your leukemia. Yeah, I noticed it. And like, I just didn't say anything. Right. It's like, that's not helpful. It's not, you think you might be helpful by being like, oh yeah, like, don't worry, I noticed it, but it's not helpful for them. Right. It might make them spiral. It might make them kind of go from one thought to the next. And then it kind of might start this like disjointed relationship. But I think overall, it's like, you just want to be like, what you want to think in the scope of like, what would I want to hear and what would I not want to hear? Right.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
think
kind
on the what to hear is probably just acknowledging this is really hard.
totally,
How are you
absolutely.
feeling, right? Because again, I think the assumption, and people may call it toxic positivity or whatever it is. And I, by nature, I am a very positive person. But when things are up and down, right, you want to acknowledge that they're not feeling great right now. Does that
Totally.
mean they're not going to be great forever? No. Right? But in the moment, there's something very validating, I think, in the human experience to say, this is really crappy. And I am
Totally.
so sorry that you're dealing with it. I'm here if you want to scream, yell, talk it out, have me sit and listen, right? I think there's a power in
100%.
listening too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly what you said. I think another part of that is like that toxic positivity is sometimes what Persians are really good at. They're like, nah, baba, hala, it's fine, hubi, like, nah, hala, cheesy niece. And you're like, no, I literally have cancer. Cheesy has.
The
Like,
cheesy
let's,
hast. Yes.
let's not
As
be
it is.
disvalidate, like, unvalidating. Let's like, try to be realistic here. Like, yeah, this sucks.
Yeah.
And another thing, I actually talk about this with clients a lot. It's like really feeling your emotions and flowing through the emotion. Because one thing that I know the Persian community is amazing at is repressing and being like, la la la, everything's great. I'm totally not depressed. I'm totally not anxious. Anxiety, cheesy knees, I don't know, blah, 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 right? That's not helpful at all. And that's only going to send you down a more negative spiral. And then it's all just going to come out at once, right? So feeling your feelings and going through the emotions with that person is, I think, gonna help them be like, this is what my life is right now, and I know it's not gonna look like this forever, and I just need to move through this like time in my life.
Totally. As a mom of two toddlers and, and young kiddos, I am learning to feel my feelings through them feeling their feelings, right? Because, and we say in our house is better out than in.
Absolutely.
Let it out, let it flow. No storm lasts forever. And this may seem like a very, category 4 or 5 level
Totally.
storm, but then it passes and
Yep.
there's recovery. And so I think having that frame of mind when whether someone is battling cancer or another big issue in their life, or also just the up and down of everyday life, right? And this is our sort of modern existence now. These more than ever, people talk about mental health, but I still think that there's this sort of under the surface, like you said, things are boiling, but be like, oh no, I'm good, I'm fine, it's all okay.
Exactly.
So there's actually a lot of bravery and courage in asking for help or acknowledging that like things are not okay right now. To me, that's strength actually versus
Absolutely.
anything else.
Absolutely, I agree. It's expressing your needs, and communication is like one of the most utmost forms of self-care, and like just being like, this is what I need, right? And especially when you're going through something as big as cancer.
what if someone is resistant to the idea of getting mental health care and support?
That's a good question because the Persian community, they do have some stigmas around mental health still. I think it's more just like trying to illustrate that like mental health has become very weaponized like in our society, in our culture, and especially in Persian culture, and understanding that it doesn't need to be this like grandiose thing that you're like putting so much like emphasis on. You're just going to someone who doesn't know anything about you, and you're just talking and you're just sharing your life. And they're saying, "Hey, have you thought about this before?" And you're like, "No, I haven't." And then you think about it and then you move on.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't need to be anything more than that. And I think illustrating that to a lot of the older Persian community is it's easy. They kind of see it in more layman terms and they're like, "Oh yeah, like it's really not that serious. Like you're just going and you're talking to the person." So, but like, like a regular amount of pushback is kind of like normal. I don't expect everyone to be like, "Oh my God, yeah, therapy's great." So it's just kind of like illustrating what it can do for you and what it can do for kind of your mental health and your well-being and just overall.
That's awesome. Any parting words, Shireen, for us and for any message you would want to share with someone who's helping someone through cancer or currently in the throes of their own healing journey or battle with cancer themselves?
I think my biggest thing is like take it easy, take your time. It's gonna be okay. And timing is everything. It's trust the timing of your life. That's like the biggest thing. It's like what your life looks like now is not what it's going to look like forever. And, taking some of the sweet parts of your life now and thinking about it at a later time and kind of just being present is, I think, the biggest thing that I want to emphasize. It's like being present in your body and your mind and your soul, everything like that is what leads to like a harmonious life. So, yeah.
I love that. And the reminder to feel the feelings.
Absolutely.
Feel the feelings.
Yes. Flow through them.
Flow through them because they don't last, right? They can feel like it'll be forever when you're in that dark moment, but really it does, like the clouds, like every storm, they do pass.
Totally. Absolutely.
Well, I hope everyone can join me in thanking Shireen for coming to the Compassionate Corner, for sharing all this great wisdom about battling through difficult experiences in life, whether that's cancer or anything else, how to be a supportive friend and colleague or neighbor, and just sort of talking about some of the stigmas that our community can have around mental health and how if we sort of go past them, there's a lot of great things that can come from this thing that really doesn't need to be a big deal. It could just be a great addition to our lives, having a space to talk with someone.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun.
Thank you, and thank you for all these years of dedication to ISCC and to the cause that we all support and love, and hope to catch you another time on the Compassionate Corner. Thanks again, Shireen.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you all so much for joining us. The Compassionate Corner podcast is produced by the International Society for Children with Cancer. I'm your host, Roya Soleimani Winner. And a special thanks to the incredible ISCC team, our producer, Shireen Shahidi, and technical director, Sogol Niku Maram, and our amazing editor, Sharsad Sabit. Music is by artist Sina Sarlak. And now at the close, we want to emphasize that the opinions expressed by the host, that's me, and guests on this podcast are not medical advice. While we strive to provide valuable insights and information, it is important to understand that the views shared here are personal opinions and experiences. We highly recommend consulting with healthcare professionals or qualified experts for personalized advice. Thanks again for spending time with us in the Compassionate Corner. We look forward to seeing you real soon.